Well, welcome.
You're not on.
What this?
Red button. There you go.
Good morning and welcome to the September meeting of the Tennessee Real Estate Commission, September 2021. At this point, we're going to ask our Executive Director, Caitlin Maxwell, to call the roll and then read into the record a public disclaimer. Ms. Maxwell.
This meeting is being recorded and/or transcribed.
The meeting is also being recorded. I think you guys all knew that, but that was that notice. Okay, for the public disclaimer, notice of the September 8th meeting of the Real Estate Commission, including date, time, and location, has been noticed on the Tennessee Real Estate website since August 26, 2020. Additionally, this month's agenda has been posted on the website since Friday, September 3rd, 2021. Now for the roll, Commissioner Joe Begley.
Here.
Commissioner Jeff Diaz.
Here.
Commissioner DJ Ferris.
Here.
Commissioner Marcia Franks.
Here.
Commissioner Steve Gwynn.
Here.
Commissioner John Moffitt.
Here.
Commissioner Joan Smith. Commissioner Stacy Torbett.
Here.
Chairman John Grease.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, next up, we're going to ask Commissioner Torbett to lead us in an invocation/prayer. And following that, if you'll stand, she'll also lead us in the pledge to the flag. Commissioner Torbett.
Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I thank you for the safe travel and the health. I ask that you give us wisdom and discernment. Our efforts in allegiance.
United States. Thank you, Stacy. Next up is to approve today's agenda. I would like to just note that the agenda you received by email is slightly different than the the agenda that's on your desk this morning. So depending on which agenda you're looking at, you should have a 9:30 mention of an appearance by our auditor, the Tennessee Real Estate Commission's auditor. Assuming that's the agenda we're working from, is there a motion to adopt and accept this agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Diaz, seconded by Ms. Franks, that the agenda be approved as presented. Discussion? Anybody want to add anything? All right, then let's vote. If you're in favor of that motion, vote aye.
Aye.
If you're opposed, vote no, and the motion passes. Next up is to approve last month's minutes.
Move to approve. Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Franks, seconded by Ms. Smith, that the minutes be approved. So, Caitlin, this is a minor point, but on one of the votes, you may recall, I abstained. Well, it says the vote was 8-1. And I was just thinking it's really minor, but the real vote was 8-0-1.
No, it was 801.
It says 8-1, and I could understand what that means. I understand what it means, but you might want to just take a look at that and see. With that minor correction, we've got a motion to approve, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, we've approved it. We're voting. All right, the motion's to approve the minutes of last month. If you're in favor of that motion, vote aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no, and the motion passes unanimously. In one moment, we're going to get to candidate A.
Yeah,
go.
All right, Caitlin, candidate A under informal appearance.
Okay, I wanted to check and make sure candidate A can hear us.
Know who candidate A?
We do. Candidate A is Alyssa Berry and her principal broker, Stephen Sharp. But we had gotten a message on the Teams that they were unable to hear us. I think everybody on Teams is currently unable to hear us.
Caitlin, this is Laura.
We
I
can
can
hear
hear you fine. Miss Berry, you are muted. There you go.
Okay. Thank you, Laura.
What does what she just said mean? We can go ahead with this?
We can go ahead, yes. Just make sure everybody is unmuted and you're really speaking into your microphone. They just sent a message that said there's certain people they cannot hear. Okay, so candidate A is applicant Alyssa Berry and her principal broker, Stephen Sharp. Miss Berry has taken the Tennessee Real Estate Affiliate Broker exam. Her principal broker has been licensed as a broker since August of 2015 and first licensed as an agent in July of 2007. The firm is Greater Chattanooga Realty, doing business as Keller Williams Realty, and a summary of the criminal and disciplinary sanction is receiving stolen property. A statement and letter of recommendation can be found on your iPad.
Caitlin, do you think candidate B is also on the line right now?
Yes, candidate B, and I can go ahead and give you their name. They were on the line. Candidate B is Kevin Flynn and his principal broker, Paul Bullington.
All right, to each of the participants in this informal appearance, either candidate A or candidate B, our procedure is to let the candidate give us his or her version of what caused he or she to have to appear in front of this commission today. After you're through telling us what happened, what you've been doing, what you'd like to do, anything you think that's relevant to your request, we'll allow commissioners to ask you questions. Following that, we'll ask the proposed principal broker to explain to the commission why that broker is interested in having the candidate affiliate with his or her firm. And finally, we'll ask the commission to see if that broker, if the commissioners have any questions for the broker. If not, or when questions are finished, the chair will entertain a motion to either approve the applicant to go forward to get licensed, to deny that request, or some other possible motion that might occur. So with that said, Alyssa, is it Alyssa Berry? Is that right? Alyssa.
Mm-hmm.
Did all that procedurally make sense to you?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay, so you have the floor, Alyssa, and you tell us what you think we need to know.
So the situation in which I'm here with you today, I had a circumstance where my mom had just passed away. I was young. I was in an abusive relationship and around the wrong kind of people. And I didn't have a job at the time, and I had no money. And I ended up stealing about $32 worth of food. It was like some steak and potato salad. And I ended up turning myself in. I brought the food back. I was in tears at the court. But it's the only thing that's ever been on my record beforehand and afterhand. This was about 9 years ago. Since then, I'm never in that kind of situation again. I don't associate with those kind of people. I've been emotionally healed from my mom passing. I've put myself together again, and this is my dream career. This is what I want to do with my life. And I did make a mistake. If you look at the paperwork in which the court had written up, they actually lowered the case itself to just receiving the stolen property, which they put it as knowingly knowingly know that it was stolen, but not actually that I stole it, which here I am today admitting that I did, but they had lowered it just because of the fact that it was my only anything and that I worked with them so well. And I guess that's really it.
Hey, commissioners, Marcia,
Good morning,
pull
Alyssa.
that microphone down.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, great. So you said that you turned yourself in. So did you go back to the store where you had stolen the food?
I went to the police station.
So I was very, when I read this earlier, I was very interested in what made you go to the police station. You didn't eat the food, and you took the food to the
No.
police station?
I did. I brought it in, and I brought everything to them, and I had told them that I had stolen everything, and they ended up going through the official, like, fingerprinting and everything like that. The store did. I found out that the store did call the police station, but I had already was on my way there, so I don't know if they were on there. If they were meaning to call me or anything, but I was already there.
Okay. So tell me what you've been doing since then. Where have you worked? What have you been doing?
So since then, I've worked several jobs, several waitressing positions. I have worked, trying to think. I've had several positions, but I was working as a marketing associate for a year and a half. I did working at Olive Garden, working at, I was from Massachusetts, so a lot of these businesses I was up there with. I did a couple of positions with advertising, and when I came down here, I got a job. I'm currently working at Ruth Chris's restaurant, and I have been taking classes over at Keller Williams. And kind of one of the things that I constantly do is I make sure that I always have at least 6 months of money on hand in the bank. I'm never putting myself in that kind of position ever again.
Okay, that sounds great. Now, tell me about what kind of classes are you taking at Keller Williams?
So I've been trying to take all the classes that are good for new agents. So I went through the Ignite course, and I completed that. And then I've been coming in for little here-there courses like the taxes and some of the advertising classes. And then I've been attending all of the sales meetings as well.
Okay, do they offer CE credit for any of those classes?
I have actually I have it right here, but I have the certificate for the Ignite, which that's finished there. And then the tax class I know I signed in on. I'm not sure if that's accredited type thing, but...
So do they give, so you don't have your license yet, so you didn't get CE credit. Do they give CE credit to those who have their license?
I see lots of no's.
Okay. That's all I have.
Other commissioners? All right, let's go to Stephen Sharp, broker. Mr. Sharp, good morning.
Yes, sir. Good morning. How are we?
I don't know about we, but I'm good. How about Alyssa Berry? Why are you interested in having her associate with your firm?
Well, when Alyssa first came to speak to us, she did let us know right off the bat that there was this past issue in her history. And so when we applied, we knew that this was a possibility that we would need to come and talk to the commission regarding the situation. Alyssa has demonstrated, like she said, she's come to class in our office. She's attended a bunch of sessions, team meetings, different things like that, and has demonstrated that she's driven by that drive to be customer service, to make sure that her clients are taken care of, and her waitressing positions, different things like that are all handled with expertise. And, you know, I feel that something that happened almost a decade in the past shouldn't reflect poorly on her at this point, seeing as how she has made every restitution that was asked of her from the court. She felt that guilt immediately upon the action taking place, and went and turned herself in, you know, regardless of if the store was going to call it in or if the police were on their way or whatever that was. So I feel that Alyssa is well equipped to take care of any situations that come up. I think this is strictly a one-off situation based on what was going on in her personal life at the time, and she is well past that, more than 9 years in the past at this point.
So just a couple quick questions. Just to follow up on what Commissioner Franks asked Ms. Berry, do any of your in-house courses carry continuing education credit?
No, sir. We don't offer any continuing education for our in-house courses.
Number two, did I see that tell me the number of agents you're responsible for or supervise?
340.
How do you do that? And how can you keep track of a new agent when you got 340 agents to supervise?
Yeah, so it's a lot of systems, and we have a great staff here. We have 14 paid staff here in our office that help us manage every aspect of making sure that we go through the licensing process correctly, to keep up with CE, to check in and provide notice to our agents of when their continuing education is due, and making sure their license status is staying current. A lot of balls to juggle, absolutely, but we have a great staff that helps come in with that. We have different systems in place for our broker helpline in terms of a phone number and email address that they can always send questions to get assistance with immediately. And just a lot of, like I said, a lot of good staff support that helps manage every aspect of that, where our people feel like they have someone they can turn to when they need those questions answered and that help given, regardless of the time.
Hey, Commissioners, questions, Jeff?
Continuing in that line about being able to supervise that many agents, is there a process to make sure that the transaction files are complete, all the documents are present, signatures are there? Do you have something like that in place?
Yes, sir. So currently we use the .loop transaction management system. We have a compliance broker on our staff that is responsible for reviewing all listing files and sales files. And we have a very strict, stringent process in place with our checklist where our agents do not receive a check for their commission payment until all those files are in place. All the T's are crossed, I's are dotted, lockboxes returned, all that type of stuff. That is the agent's responsibility. We make sure that we shepherd them through that process.
The questions? If not, is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve this candidate's application.
All right, I have a motion by Ms. Frank, second by Ms. Torbett, that the applicant be allowed to continue to get her real estate license. Is there further discussion? Any discussion? If not, are you ready to vote? All right, let's vote. Those in favor of that motion vote aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. And the motion passes unanimously. Good luck, Ms. Berry.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Have a great career.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right, next up is candidate B, Ms. Maxwell.
Okay, candidate B is applicant Kevin Flynn and his principal broker, Paul Bullington. Mr. Flynn has taken the Tennessee Real Estate Broker exam. His principal broker has been a broker since September 2019 and was first licensed in March of 2007. The firm is Keller Williams Realty, and a summary of the charge or the criminal and disciplinary section is theft under $500. His statement and a letter of recommendation can be found on your iPad.
Thank you. Kevin, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I think I'm still muted.
I just heard you. Can you hear us?
Oh, okay. All right, awesome.
All right, I assume you can hear us.
Yes.
Okay. You understand how this procedure works at this point?
I believe so.
All right, so at this time you have the floor. You'd like to tell us anything that will help your case, but in particular details of what got you in trouble and what you've been doing since you got here, since you got through that little hurdle.
All right. So I'm in recovery. Been sober for it'll be 7 years in January of next year. So what happened? I was in active addiction. It's not a pretty story. I had been drinking and abusing prescription medication. And I walked to a Kroger and I was under the influence, of course. I don't remember too many specifics, but I tried to walk out of there with a phone charger. And then I was stopped by the manager, called the police, and I went to jail that night. I have one previous arrest before that for some possession of marijuana, and this theft charge was, I believe, September of 2014. And then I went to treatment at Cumberland Heights and the Still Waters for Men program in January of 2015. So was taken through the 12 steps out there, and went to sober living in Nashville at a place called Chip's Place. Off of Young's Land. I stayed there for about 20 months. I ended up being the house manager there, and I was working an early recovery job. I was working at Cracker Barrel on Charlotte Pike. And then I'd say in September of 2016, I believe that's what it was, I started working at Cumberland Heights as a patient registrar. I was in patient registration admissions, and did that for about 2 years. And then I went and started working in the men's program, started to pursue counseling. And I stayed at Cumberland Heights for another 8 months before going to Still Waters for Men. It's a part of Cumberland Heights, but it's a little bit different. It's for the repeat offenders, I guess you could say. It's a 12-step immersion camp, and then I started, of course, working there. I was counseling, and then I do case management as well. So that's my current job. And I've also I've been engaged in 12-step fellowship in Nashville and in the Dixon area. I have a sponsor. I sponsor guys. I continue to work the steps, go to meetings. I'm very active in that. So that's what happened.
So it's just a personal opinion, but I'd say you ought to be pretty proud of what you've done, and not come in here necessarily with what sounds to me like your tail between your legs kind of thing. I mean, that's pretty inspiring that you've got to where you are today. All right, commissioners, questions for Kevin? Marcia.
Good morning, Kevin. This is Marcia Franks. I also want to congratulate you for what you've been able to accomplish, because it's a great thing that you've been able to get out of that life. I'm wondering, why are you wanting to be a realtor, or excuse me, have a real estate license?
So I've taken an interest in it. My wife and I bought our first home 2019, and I love the process. I've taken an interest in business and sales, and I love the aspect of helping people. And I felt like I was helped by my realtor. And, I want to, of course, stay in that, helping people. And then I also want to provide, some sort of generational wealth for my family, after I'm gone, start working on this now, and then, gradually move into real estate investment. That's what I've taken an interest in.
That's all I have.
Other questions? If not, Mr. Bullington, you're up. Can you tell us what you know about Kevin, why you like what you see, and why you want him associated with your firm?
Yes, sir. So Kevin came in, I guess, about 3-4 months ago into our office to interview and introduce himself, and was very much a similar story of, we didn't really know much about Kevin, but he was very transparent on the front end about his past and kind of where he wanted to be. And it was really more of a focus of where he wanted to be, which is where I live. I live in where do I want to be? I'm a second chance kind of guy, not usually a third or a fourth chance, but always a second. And to hear what he's come from and what he wants to do and how he wants to help the people that he's already helping continue to build and offer something greater for their next step. And then obviously provide for his family was encouraging to me. When we first got this program or the application to me before the commission today, one of the questions was how do, on our personal relationship, how do I know the applicant? And I talked to Kevin kind of in depth. I was like, buddy, I really don't know. I don't know you. So what we can do is how can I know you? What can we do going forward to make sure that we don't put ourselves in a position, of question ever? And so he came back to me with an email of probably 20 bullet points, which was way too many, of what we could do together to make sure that we're always on top of each other and, access to checking account statements and make sure that I was like, whoa, hang tight. I appreciate your spirit. I really want to make sure that we stay good forever. But I think really it comes down to the accountability part, and that's where he lives, is in accountability. And I appreciated him taking the initiative to figure out how we can stay accountable to each other, to make sure that we work together as a team, and as within our office, to make sure that we don't ever put our clients or our company or this commission in place to explain ourselves.
So, Paul, a number of agents that you supervise?
So we have 24 agents in our office today. We're a satellite office of the Franklin Keller Williams office, who has more. We're able to take advantage of the Franklin office as far as the compliance department that oversees and goes through all of our stuff, and the education and the mentorship and all the things the larger office offers. We're just on a smaller scale that looks more like 20 or so agents that truly work together.
Okay, commissioners, questions for Mr. Bullington?
Question.
Steve?
Paul, are the 20 bullet points in that email what you refer to as a safety plan?
Yes.
Write up. I thought the safety plan is a great idea. I'm wondering if that's what you were referring to.
Yes, sir. I would probably compare it to a safety plan that was probably designed for safe living or sober living.
Thank you.
Other questions? If not, Chair's happy to entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the candidate.
I have a motion by Mr. Ferris, seconded by Mr. Diaz, that Mr. Flynn be allowed to continue to get his real estate license. If you're in favor of that motion, please vote aye.
Aye.
If you're opposed, vote no. And the motion passes unanimously. Mr. Flynn, good luck.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Make yourself proud and make Mr. Bullington proud as well while you're at it. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Is this our new truck auditor in the back?
That is.
Let's come on up, Miss Megan.
You sound like Bob.
Come on down.
No prizes down here.
You want to, you can stand or you can sit, whichever you're more comfortable with. So, Megan, we've not met. I don't think anybody in this commission has met, and a lot of us don't even know what your job is and how you go about doing it. So, would you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about why you're associated with the Real Estate Commission and your function?
So my name is Megan. My last name is Barisic, and kind of a whole mouthful.
Barisic?
Barisic.
Okay.
I've been in auditing and compliance and QA for about a decade. I have 2 bachelor's degrees, one in English and analysis and one in nursing. I started out originally doing QA for nursing and JCO to make sure that hospitals were following federal law. Yeah.
QA.
Quality assurance.
Quality assurance. I'm sorry.
Ask you, Jeff.
Well, you get an A.
All right. Thank you.
When we relocated from Kansas City, my family did back down to Nashville, which is where all of my husband's family is from, kind of the Mount Juliet area. There was an opening with the state for an auditing position that I applied for, and kind of ended up here doing part of the Real Estate Commission audits. They are a little bit different than any audit that I had done before, but they follow pretty much the same premise, which is just making sure that the intent of the law and the letter of the law is being followed by the people that are audited. Checking out financial situations to make sure that the money trail is pretty transparent and everybody's following the rules that are established. So mostly what I do is random audits, and if there's any kind of problems that come up or the commission wants to kind of re-audit somebody, I know we've done a couple of those.
So how do you pick which firms you want to audit?
Randomly, unless there's been some kind of compliance issue and they've been recommended to come back and be re-audited. Otherwise, it's all completely random.
So random, like a computer-generated thing? Or
so like we print out a list of all of the firms and they're assigned a numerical number, like if it was AA firm would be number 1, AB firm would be number 2, etc. And then we use a random number generator.
And how many a month do you think?
We do
I've advised her not to answer that question.
Are you her attorney?
I am.
Okay.
And we would like to keep some, I can't pronounce the word I want to say, but we would like to keep the quantity anonymous to keep the integrity of the audit.
It's more than one and less than 2,000.
Correct.
Okay.
Less than 4,000. There's 4,000 firms now.
All right. So in a typical audit, Megan, what do you ask for?
So we ask typically for 3 months worth of data. We're looking at financial data, and there is a list of all the exact things that would be required available online. But basically, we're looking at financial data to make sure that any monies taken in go into an appropriate account, that it's traceable where it went, that it didn't magically end up in a bank account that isn't a part of a business account or an escrow. And then we look at signed contracts to make sure that the contracts are being followed, essentially. If you said you were going to close on this date, did you? If not, did you rewrite something?
Questions, Marcia?
So I'm so glad you're here today. I met with a group of people from the Tennessee Realtors Association this past week, and this was one of the questions. They wanted to know, obviously this person hadn't been audited in a while because they asked, was that little man, does he not still come around to offices anymore? And I thought, well, now that's been a few years ago, maybe 10, but they were asking, who is the auditor? I told them I didn't know who the auditor was. And they asked, if a company has 12 agents and they have to send in 3 months worth of stuff, but you've got another, we spoke with one this morning that had 340 agents, so they probably have lots of transactions. And so they thought that was a little burdensome to the larger companies to have to send in that much information. And I really didn't have any, I'm just like, well, that's how it goes. I didn't have any answer to it. So
I can speak a little bit of that. We were asking for a year. So
we're asking for a year.
Pre-Megan,
yes.
We were asking for a year.
Okay.
So Megan and I have worked together to listen to the feedback. First, when I started, the feedback was, we're not doing any audits. They're not happening. People aren't. And then people were getting audited, and a year was too much. And so I think 3 months, I think we have not really gotten too many complaints about 3 months because it's a lot better than a full year worth of bank statements and contracts and all of that. So I think obviously it's an evolving process, but I don't think we want to go to such a short period that we really can't keep the integrity of the audit. So if you get that question, you can just tell them that it was a year. And so 3 months is, and we're trying to balance really large firms with really small firms. So occasionally Megan will even get a smaller firm that they didn't do any transactions in 3 months. So then we have to increase the range to 6 months, or maybe even the whole year. So that's definitely something that she's balancing. But 3 months is a lot shorter and a lot less information than a whole year.
There was some concern that some companies are not being audited at all. So when they're picked randomly, I was audited maybe 2 years ago. So do I go to the bottom of the list, or am I still up here floating with everybody?
So I'd like to address all three things you brought
Okay,
up.
okay.
And I love to let Caitlin speak first because she's obviously the expert. I'm just the junior expert. So number one, it's lovely to meet you all. I started in the middle of COVID, and so I haven't had much face-to-face contact with anybody. And it's kind of nice to see faces and interactions and facial expressions. And I would love to be a little bit more transparent, one, in who I am. I'm really not that scary. And two, in the audit process in general. I think people hear the word audit and they get a little freaked out, and they're worried that I'm coming to rifle through all your paperwork and find the one T you didn't cross and then, hang you for it. And that's not it at all, right? Our job is to basically make sure that the rules that are in place that you guys have decided are best practice are being followed, and that the consumers who are utilizing realtors have a reason to have faith in realtors, to know that they are doing what they're supposed to do and somebody's keeping an eye on it. My job is not to come in and say, oh, you misspelled her last name. Like that's really not what we're here for. And I think auditing has kind of a bad rap that it seems like we're out to get somebody. We're really not. When I said we look both at the letter of the law and the spirit of the law, my job is not to come in and look for teeny tiny mistakes, but to make sure that in general everybody is doing what they agreed to do, which is treat people fairly, follow the laws and the rules that are set out. As far as how auditing goes year over year, we tend to not audit people from the year before. So if you were audited last year, we'll usually pull your name from next year's pool just so that there is a better distribution of who's being audited. That's typically how it works right now.
You have a way of knowing if somebody's not been audited in 10 years?
So one of the things that I'm really pushing for that poor Caitlin is having to deal with is I would really like the audit system to completely go online so that all of the documents are kept, their time and date stamped. That way, if you say, I sent that in to Megan on Thursday, there's a record of it. Caitlin can see it, our legal team can see it, and there's no way that it can get lost or shuffled around or there really be any way to dispute what was turned in when. Also, it's just an easier way to store all of that documentation. So if something comes up 6 months down the road or a year down the road, we're not digging through a bunch of files. And so our goal, and we've started working with our IT team on this, is to be able to have everything that's needed for the audit uploaded directly to the core system, where you go and renew your licenses, where you go in and put in your CEUs and stuff, so that stuff is just a little bit more transparent. The other big plus to this for me is that, let's face it, going through digging all of your documents out and turning them into me is time consuming. And I would prefer it be the least amount of time possible. And if you can upload a digital file so that the people in your records department or whoever's having to find all of those bank statements can just print to PDF and upload it, that seems a lot faster than having to save it all, email it in emails that aren't too big. We're trying to make the process less cumbersome. Right now it goes out through email first. If I don't get a response within 5 days to the email, I call the number on file. Usually if that doesn't work, I just reach out to whatever the business phone listed is until I can find somebody.
Question?
Absolutely.
Steve.
Megan, what are you finding, let's say the top 3 errors that you're finding that if there's anybody out there listening can, tighten up a little bit?
Yeah, one is just they don't have the records when we need them. So normally we say, hey, can you get these to me in 10 days? And in the 10 days, if you say, hey, Megan, I'm gonna need a little longer, it's a holiday, somebody's out, whatever, we give you 30 days. So a lot of times just getting a hold of the bank statements they need, getting a hold of the documents that we need just to audit. The other big thing I see is if dates change in the contract, sometimes there isn't paperwork to show that it changed. And so the dates just don't match up on like when things were signed for versus when they were laid out in the original contract. And then as far as like financial stuff, I would say that's our third biggest one, is just stuff is said, oh, in the contract, money was received this date, and then it'll be 15 or 20 days until we see it hit an escrow account or a bank account.
Okay, thank you.
So is there no auditing? There's several companies now that would prefer that the closing company or the title company or the law firm hold earnest money. And so does that cause you a problem or? Okay.
Not really at all. Honestly, the thing I'm auditing for is to make sure I can tell where the money went, if that makes sense. Like I'm not super concerned if it took 1 day or 3 days, as long as you're within the legal ramifications. I just want to make sure that it's really clear. If they said, Megan, what'd you do with that check? I can say, oh, it went to this account, then it was transferred to escrow, or it went into this account and then it went to the closing company.
Yes.
So this body has the ability to establish rules, change rules, amend rules. We like making Anna's life difficult with the rules changes that we put in place. But is there anything in our rules currently that are old, obsolete, don't really help you do your job, or any way that we can make your job easier with the rules?
What a wonderfully unexpected question.
He didn't mean
He
it.
gets the
didn't
star
mean
for
it.
the day.
Oh, there you go. So I've only been doing this about a year, and I would say that this year has been a lot of me getting my feet under me, learning how the audit process should go. I would say that you guys actually have a much clearer set of rules than I'm used to. There's usually a lot more room for interpretation or rationalizing. This is actually pretty cut and dry, and I feel like it's very easy to understand if you're new to following these rules, what it is that's expected. And if that's something that there's a way that we can make more transparent, I honestly believe that nobody should be scared of auditing. And I would love for that to be a less fear-based, like people see the email from me that's like, hey, you've been chosen to be audited. And like, I can hear the blood pressure go up. And I'm like, I promise I'm really not that evil. They don't give me any kind of like meanness. I get a red pen. So like, calm down. I'm not gonna.
So your experience with JACO and things like that, an institution that's about to be reviewed by JACO, they get informed about a window of when that inspection is going to be occurring. Is a window of time, would that be helpful to you to give the firms an idea of when they're about to be audited, or is it supposed to be a surprise?
I mean, I think that the hope is that because we're dealing with money that's easily transferred, we don't want to give too big a lead in. The hope being that your money is right where it should be, right? And there shouldn't be any issues. We're trying to balance that. Please don't fear the audit process. Also, rules do need to be followed, and my job is just basically to make sure you're doing it.
Part of it is that you're supposed to just show up and say, give me your records. Okay, thank you.
EJ.
Thank you, Chairman. Great to meet you. Thanks for your spirit and attitude and work here. Something that Commissioner Franks asked made me think of the iBuyer firms, the out-of-state firms who may or may not have a brick and mortar place here. Have any of those come across your desk in the past year yet?
So I've done 2 last year, and obtaining the records was a much more lengthy endeavor, but they were compliant when we asked them to send in their records. So it's just taken a little bit of different communication. I think with COVID, the whole world is communicating a little differently. And I was a pretty standard paper, meet you in person. I was very used to audits in person where I would come in and introduce myself and hopefully make the staff feel a little less terrified of me. And having to do it all via email and online, I think is much more intimidating. And that's actually something that I've been talking to Caitlin quite a bit about, is how can we make this a little more forward facing and a little less intimidating. I mean, at the end of the day, the audits do need to be done, and they definitely serve a purpose, but there's no need for it to be scarier than it is.
So it seems to me that the 2 biggest complaints we get have to do with timeshare companies. Do you audit timeshare companies?
I have not thus far.
Do you feel like that's in your purview? I don't know.
I don't think it is under hers. I was actually looking because there's specific rules that lay out, how long a firm has to keep records, 3 years, and the authority for the commission to come in and search your records, and that the timeshare is a separate section.
Regulated, right?
Yes.
And to me, it seems like that I'm pretty sure their records are pretty good shape. But
we can talk to legal about that and maybe, but right now it's specifically firms.
So my second question, if not timeshare, what about property management companies? All they do is property management. Do you go see those guys or talk to
If
those
they
people?
are a firm licensed with the state, they are in the audit. So property management firms would be under the same.
So if we get a complaint from a former tenant who said he or she only got part of their deposit back, does the audit go so far in to see that the money was withheld because there were expenses associated with cleaning the place or repairing it before they send the balance back?
So I did actually do a couple of those last year that were very similar to the situation that you're describing. And essentially what I do on those, and I did have quite a few property management groups in last year's audit, you are able to see where the deposit was given, where it was held, to make sure that it was held where it was supposed to be in an account that was easily identifiable. And then unfortunately, there's not like a designated place where property management companies explain any reduced returns. So usually I just had to reach out to those people, and then they were forced to just deal with me on the phone or an email, basically saying, hey, it looks like you took $1,000 deposit. I see 500 of it was returned. What was the other 500? Like, was there an issue? Was there damage to the property? And normally I would just take a statement from them, date and time it, type it up.
Caitlin, would Megan's role ever include an investigation? Like, we have a complaint, we say we need more information about it. Can we get the auditor to take a look at it? Is that
In the past, we have not. I think Megan has been lucky that she hasn't had to have one of those cases, but there have been cases where we have had the auditor come in and help us sort through everything. So yes, once a complaint is opened, that's when there's been a couple cases where legal has said, we need help with this.
It depends on if it's a financial problem or a criminal type thing.
so? I know legal sends inspectors out occasionally. Can the auditor also do that? Do you have that authority?
Not an inspector?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that. I do know we've worked in coordination with both. There was a case, it's probably been 2 years ago now, where we had the auditor get involved and we were having trouble getting some of the records. So then we had the investigator actually show up in person to obtain the records, and then the auditor still did their part, but we worked in coordination with both teams.
Other questions, Jeff? Benji?
So, just going back to the window of records that you're looking at. So you both feel comfortable that 3 months is enough for you to look at to get a sense that the law, the letter of the law, the spirit of the law is being followed?
I'm going to take that case by case. We request 3 months, and this is really kind of the issue of big firms versus small firms, right? If I get into one of those huge firms, that may have 300 or 400 contracts in 3 months. And that's quite a bit to audit. That takes a little bit of time, and you're looking at multiple agents and multiple locations and multiple accounts, and it does take a long time. There are other smaller groups where they might do 3 or 4 deals in an entire year. And so we kind of take it case by case. If there's not at least 3 contracts to look at, I usually will ask for a whole year's worth of data. Same thing with a big firm. If I get in there and 2 or 3 or 4 of the contracts I'm looking at have issues, I may request the entire year of data. Like, is this a pattern, or did you guys just have a really rough month? Like, what's going on? And kind of dig a little bit deeper. But we've kind of hit on doing 3 months as a good starting point. And if we have questions, we ask for more.
Jay.
Thank you. Caitlin, is it in your discretion to discuss any punishment or penalties that arise from an audit that is not met with the integrity that it ought to?
So what we have historically done is, if there is a finding within the audit, then we open a complaint. And so then it would come before you, like any other complaint, anonymously with the violations that the auditor found. So it would go to legal. They would look at them, make a recommendation to you. And so that's how you would see it. Occasionally, we've also just put that person back in the audit to see if it was a pattern, or so they've been audited, maybe last year, and then they're put in again this year. But typically what we do is we open a complaint, and then it comes before the commission.
I just want to say, I think the system is so much. I've had a license for 35 years, and the system is so much better now than it used to be, because the little man that did used to come around would tell you, I need 1 active, 1 pending, and 1 sold, and always have those at the ready, your best ones for me to look at. I mean, he would tell us that. So, as a principal broker, we always had those at the front of the file just in case he came. So really, that wasn't appropriate. So I think what we're doing now, while it may be hard on some companies, I think that when you have hundreds of agents, that's part of the responsibility that you take on. And so I don't see it needs to be lessened any for a larger company because of that. But I'm happy to meet you today, and I think we're in good shape with you. I like that you're not a pouncer on people, so that's good.
That was a compliment, right?
That was a compliment.
I just want to make sure. Any other Q or A?
One other question.
Steve.
Are you finding so far that people's attitude has been, I'm waiting for you, no problem, here, I'll get it to you quickly? Do some firms have like a compliance officer, or is this kind of a dreaded kind of thing? Oh, I don't think I'd ever get audited, and
it's a good mix. Probably about 25% of people have stuff back to me within 15 minutes, and it's kind of terrifying how organized it is. And to them, I say congratulations. That's amazing. I was actually kind of intimidated the first time I got one of those. I was like, whoa, okay, yeah, no, good for you guys. Some people do have somebody assigned in their office who keeps track of their records, responds to my requests, that kind of thing. I've had a few people, because the requests now come via email and I'm not an in-person, show up with my badge, look super official. I've had a couple of people respond and say, is this real? So, of course, that's something we go through. I have had people who are just straight terrified. I mean, they're absolutely terrified that I am going to, that I wield the power to single-handedly in their career or ruin their business. And that's not at all what I do, right? I go in, I am essentially employed just to check the records and tell you what I find. I don't get any vote in what happens or how that should be handled. And I like to remind them, I'm just here to see what's going on. And then the rest of it is up to somebody who's a whole lot more familiar with the laws and rules than I am. So a good mix. I'd say about 50% are pretty neutral, 25% are overly zealous, and the other 25% are terrified that I'm out to get them.
Great. Good answer. Thanks.
Okay. So, Megan, I think you made a good impression today.
Yay.
And as a special request, please don't pull my company's name out.
Well, next year, so highest offers considered.
For a brisket.
So what do you got, John?
I like sides. Big on the
There you go. Great. Appreciate you coming down. Caitlin, thanks for setting this up. I think it's helpful to this entire commission just to put a face with what the job is and who's doing it.
Well, it was lovely to meet you all, and if you ever want to see me back or have questions, I'm obviously around, but it was nice to put faces with names. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
A copy of all their firms after this.
10-minute break.
Can we at some point get a picture of the commission? If maybe it needs to be another month, but we need a picture of the commission.
Well, here.
I know.
Or do we?
Yeah.
You gonna do it after the break then? Or you want to do it at the end?
I don't care. So you organize it.
Let's do it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we kind of need Caitlin in with us too, don't we?
Caitlin doesn't want to be in the super.
We can get Aaron to take the picture later, right, Aaron? We're going to take a group picture later. If you'll take it.
This before.
After break.
Right, like in the front, right here. With the...
Yeah, and so that will be behind us.
Yeah.
And put the flags over it.
We're going to move these in a little bit.
Yeah. Because I don't know why this is, it's, I guess it's a minute.
That's the same distance.
I have no idea.
I don't know, but if they're not, that will really bother me.
Get all this plastic stuff down too.
I think this one may need to come in a little bit, maybe. The U.S. flag.
That's good.
This meeting is no longer being recorded or transcribed.
Right now. Those cheats. You do? They're addicting, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
Oh, I love it. When they be 90.
This meeting is being recorded and or transcribed.
Tennessee Real Estate
We
Commission.
actually have one more waiver request on there.
Hilton, my fault. Sorry, Ross. Tell us what this is, Caitlin.
This meeting is being recorded and or transcribed.
So this is a waiver request that we received, and I'm presenting it to the commission because they requested to be presented. I am not sure that the commission, we can ask legal whether the commission has the authority. This license expired March 6th of 2020 and is asking for a waiver of the retesting as they would fall outside of the 1 year.
I'd like to hear a legal opinion on that too.
So is there anybody online with us on this one?
No, we typically don't. We typically just have these requests send in the letter and the doctor's note. We treat them the same as the medical waiver request, even if they're not quite.
Okay. Ms. Matlock, counsel for the Real Estate Commission.
Yes, so it's Rule 1260-01-.213, and it says if a license is expired for more than 1 year, then that individual must reapply for licensure, meet current education requirements, and pass all required examinations. So since the license expired in March of 2020, we're well over the 1 year mark.
So can we just choose not to hear it then?
So,
or what?
Motion to deny.
I'll make a motion to deny the request.
I'll second.
Motion on the floor is to deny the request, and the rationale is our rules don't allow us to do this. Discussion?
I just wanted, so it seems like this applicant, Ms. Arlene, is referring clients to her old firm. So, but in order to collect whatever referral fee or whatever that it seems to be getting, she has to maintain her license in some capacity. Is that true?
The referral fee, she would have to have a license.
Yeah, I think basically what we tell everybody is if you're doing any of the activities under the definition of broker, you would need an active license.
So is retired considered?
No.
Okay, thank you.
All right, the motion on the floor is to deny the request. Let's vote. If you're in favor of that motion, vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. If you're opposed, vote no. And the motion passes on 8-0 vote. Okay, let's move on. Now, Mr. White. Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the Commission, welcome to our September meeting. Call your attention to the education agenda for today, September 8th, 2021. I've reviewed all providers, courses, and instructors on our agenda today, and I'm going to present them to you this morning for your approval. S1 through S23.
Motion to approve S1 to S23.
I have a motion by Mr. Diaz, second by Ms. Franks, that the Education Director's recommendation be adopted and courses S1 through S23 be approved. Discussion. Anyone prefer to pull a course out to discuss? If not, let's vote. Those in favor of that motion vote aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no, and the motion passes unanimously. You have one instructor for us, correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Yes, sir. We've got one instructor for you today on your iPads, John Wheeler, and I present him today for your approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Franks, seconded by Ms. Torbett, that the Education Director's recommendation be adopted and the instructor be approved. Discussion. Those in favor of that motion vote aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. What else, Mr. White? That's pretty succinct so far.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have anything else for you this morning.
That's even more succinct. Appreciate it. Thanks, Ross.
Thank you, sir.
On to the Executive Director's report. Ms. Maxwell.
Okay, I don't have a large update for the commission. I would like to discuss the October meeting and the 2022 calendar. On the October meeting, I had sent out an email in between the August meeting and this meeting about it's really not a change, but with us being remote the last year, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that now that the governor's executive order is no longer in place, in order for us to conduct a meeting, we have to have an in-person quorum. And so for our commission, an in-person quorum would be at least 5 members present. So essentially, if we find out a couple days before that we're not going to be able to have 5 members, we will need to cancel the meeting. And with, things being a little bit crazy right now, I can understand where, on Friday you might be able to attend the meeting and on Monday something might have changed where you're no longer able to attend. So just wanted to reiterate that. Right now for October, we have 6 members that are able to attend. And so if you haven't told me you're not able to attend, then I have you as attending. And I just want to reiterate because we're kind of close to that 5 number. And so as we're planning for our East Tennessee meeting, please let me know. Especially if you haven't MapQuested Jackson to Johnson City. It's a long way. So definitely
It's not any longer than Johnson City to Jackson.
It's not. It is not, Stacy. That is true. That is true. You said you were coming. I know. Listen, it's not. I agree. We're on the border of.
So, I guess curiosity is which people do you have not attending?
You are not attending. Marcia is not attending, and Joe is unable to attend.
Joe?
Joe said it's too far.
It's in your backyard, Joe.
Too close. It's too close. They don't want to be seen there.
Oh, I mean, we have. Of course, I don't look at my calendar past about 2 days, so it's my wife's fall break, and we already have a beach trip with people. But I'll come back if we don't have 5. No, I mean I can come back. I've made that drive a lot, so she's not happy, but.
So anyways, definitely get with me because we are, since we're in a new location, we're planning the room and some of those other things that you have to do to have a meeting. So definitely let me know so I can, in advance, cancel if we aren't going to have the 5. With that being said, I would just also request, it seemed like we accidentally planned this meeting over fall break. And I've seen that with even our staff too that have kids in school. So if everybody maybe between now and the next meeting could go back and look, I can resend the 2022 calendar, but go back and look and see if it's over your fall break or if there's any kind of conflict like that. Because I know that affects more than just one person.
Particularly in October,
Yes.
fall break lands around on or about Columbus Day. usually that week.
Yes. So we might go ahead and look at October for next year. And if you notice that they're same week again, let me know because we can go ahead and change that.
I wanted to check to be sure. The September meeting is September 7th of next year. The Arello is meeting in Nashville the week of the 12th. I just wanted to be sure. I have down Trek on the 7th, but I wanted to be sure.
Let me go back and look. I have the date as the 14th and 15th.
I've got the 7th.
But if it's the 14th, then everybody's going to be here, so maybe that.
Well, I know we did discuss that, whether it would be better for us to already be here or not. Let me make sure, though, because I know
It's the week of the 12th, September 12th, 2022. For some reason, I have Trek on this. Yeah, I have Trek on the 7th.
I might not be looking at I might be looking at the first draft.
Just if you could look at that and send it back out to us so we
I
can
believe Aaron
send it.
But it's well.
Okay, yeah, it looks like we did change that date to September 7th and 8th. So you are correct. And then it looks like...
So would it be better for us to have it, if we want people to go to their Arello meetings, to have it on the week that people are in town? That's up to the people who are from out of town. Well, I would just like for us to have a good showing. This year, the Florida Realtor, their commissioners are nearly all of them attending our meeting in Florida. So I just think it's a good opportunity just to drop in for a meeting or two or whatever. So
Arello is starting on, what date did you say? The
week of the 12th.
Is it starting that Wednesday?
No, we're moving things next year that they be between Monday and Friday because some of the staff could not get overtime and stay over for Saturdays. So all our meetings going forward are going to be like Monday through Friday. It may be Tuesday to Friday. I'm not sure.
Okay. So you think potentially moving the meeting?
It's up to, I obviously won't be able to be at the commission meeting if we have it because of my duties at Arello. But I'm just thinking if any of these people want to come, I don't see them driving from Johnson City 2 weeks in a row. So it's up to them, not me.
Well, I can go back between now and then and why don't you, Marcia, do you want to get together in between the next meeting and we can find out exactly when Arello is and then look at the Trek calendar?
Okay, perfect.
And then the only other thing, I was going to see if everybody could look at their calendar for November. Right now, we had set it as just a one-day meeting with the commission meeting on the 10th, as the 11th is Veterans Day and the state is closed. We have a hearing that we have that Anna has filed on the 10th. That was the closest date that we could get for the hearing. And so the November 2021, yes, this November. So I was going to see if everybody could look and see if they're available the 9th and potentially hold that date as well. We would like to proceed with the hearing, but right now we don't know what judge is assigned. We don't know whether they want to be, it's up to the discretion of the judge, whether it's in person or virtual.
The 9th is better for me because the 10th starts the NAR conference that I'm going to.
So the hearing will be the 10th.
Oh, the hearing would be the 10th.
The hearing would be the 10th regardless. And if it's in person, we had talked about being able to do both. But I was just going to have everybody go ahead and look at the 9th as well and see if they had a conflict.
Happy birthday.
So you might not want to be here.
Going by that, July 13th is my birthday.
Let me write this down real quick.
Stacy was in a hearing last year on her birthday, or you at least were having a birthday dinner.
A birthday
party, yeah.
That was the longest
This is Zoom.
hearing of all time.
I woke up thinking about that this morning.
You never know.
Is it a culture?
It was a nightmare.
All right, so
It's one of those jumping dreams.
We can't do Veterans Day.
What day is Veterans Day?
The 11th, which is
Always
why
the
we
What day of the week is it?
why don't we
on a Thursday?
why don't we do this? If commissioners will pencil in the 9th as a potential start of the November session. Just pencil it in. It may not be, depending on what a judge does or what an attorney for a respondent does. But just book the 9th and the 10th at this point.
We can send out a follow-up email to remind everybody. And then if you just want to look and let me know.
Oh, when's your birthday, Joe?
July 13th.
We've already passed it. Oh, next year. Okay. All right. Other questions for Caitlin about? Yes.
We not do the hearing on the same day as the meeting that afternoon?
So we can, but it will likely depend on if the judge wants the hearing to be virtual or in person. Because
I thought we couldn't do virtual though.
We cannot, but the judge.
Oh, Jay's can.
Ooh.
So I can check and see. I know that some of the current trends for the Administrative Procedures Division has been to stick with virtual meetings, but I spoke with someone, I can't remember, someone I work with here, about it, and it may be possible for the commission to be here in person and the judge to be virtual on like a screen or something. But we don't know. As Caitlin said before, I've filed it for the 10th, but I haven't heard anything from opposing counsel or at the Administrative Procedures Division. So I should have a better understanding by the October meeting about details. Unfortunately, I don't have them right now.
Question. So I have not been to a hearing live yet. When they happen in Nashville, does it happen in this room, or does do we have to go to a courthouse, or how does it work?
No, it would be in this room. You all would be seated like you are right now. I would be seated probably, the attorney for the state over here. Respondent's attorney is going to be seated here. If the judge comes in person, they typically sit over here, but they can also sit there next to the court reporter. So it would just...
If we're here and we finish at noon, theoretically you could start a hearing in this room at 1 o'clock. I'm for, this is my personal opinion, is knocking this thing out in one day as opposed to having a commission meeting on Wednesday, finish at noon, have to kill time the rest of the day, stay another night, and have a hearing the next day. To me, that makes no sense. So
the hearing...
But you might have to do that hearing. It depends on the judge that they might want it first thing.
Yeah, so the hearing is noticed for the 10th, and I just set the time to 8:30, meaning at the beginning of the meeting. So the judge can will make a decision whether it will be first or second. So we just wanted to provide you with that information if you wanted to do a 2-day meeting instead of 1-day meeting.
We did a 2-day meeting. The 11th is better.
Right.
Tuesday, Wednesday. We can't make any decisions until the judge tells us.
Right. So once I hear more information, I'll send that over to Caitlin, then she can communicate it with you all. But I don't have that information right now.
A lot of times those formal hearings the night before will decide to not have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could also be that if we were working with opposing counsel, like we have presented settlement offers, that would be presented to you, and you can decide whether or not you'd like to proceed with the hearing or not. So there are a lot of different variables that are still up in the air. I just think we were looking to see your availability for that Tuesday.
You mean Wednesday?
Wednesday. The meeting is Wednesday. Tuesday we were thinking about doing the board meeting on Tuesday and having the hearing on Wednesday. So it would be moving it right now. It's set for a 1-day meeting because Thursday is Veterans Day. So it would be Tuesday and Wednesday.
Under any set of circumstances, we're going to be here Wednesday. The question is, do we need Tuesday to accomplish what we need to get
Right.
done?
I hope to have more information for you all by the next meeting.
Talking the 10th, correct?
Yes.
10th is booked. We may do the 9th
Right.
and 10th.
For some reason, I had it down as the 3rd. Wrong. That's wrong. Did you ever have it down for the 3rd?
Let me write that down.
Long ago. All right.
All right. I think everybody's on notice that we may have to amend the calendar in some form or fashion in November. And beyond that, I think that was the intent of staff to let us know. Questions for Caitlin in her role as executive director? If not, I have two thoughts, Caitlin. I looked at the PSA report. PSA is something I get somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
We're on the record here, Chair.
Yeah, I got it. I understand. I'm a medical novice. I don't know those Q&A things you're talking about. So I noticed that on the affiliate licenses, the national portion, and this might have been like this forever, only 40% of the people are passing it when they take it. Is that the right number cumulatively?
It roughly fluctuates between 40 and 50%, but we never really get over a 50% pass rate.
That you imply anything from that? I mean, 4 out of 10 pass.
I can tell you that's nationwide also.
Are they not
So you'll
teaching it?
also see anybody. No, I could also get this broken out by first time, because this includes first time and repeat. So if you wanted it broken out by people just taking it for the first time, I think we do see people take it, not study a lot the first time, get a sense of the test, and then come back and take it again. But that number has always historically fluctuated between 40 and 50% and really never over 50%.
Does that fluctuate during?
That's essentially how it's been since I've been in this position. I've always seen it relatively fluctuate between only a 40 to 50% pass rate.
And what we've been able to ascertain at Arello is the national part includes most of the math part of it. The state part, they're probably more familiar with anyhow because they live in the state. But a lot of the math is in that national part usually.
Yeah, the math is in the national part. And the state part is just our laws and our rules. It's shorter. So, and you'll see anybody that we have set up is likely either, because you'll see on this report that it's broken down by the provider. But anybody that we've set up that's under Tennessee Real Estate Commission is going to be somebody that either let their license expire, and so we're setting them up to retest, or we also set up out-of-state candidates who meet or exceed our requirements.
I think it's a good thing for us in our newsletters. I mean, that might be something. I mean,
we have highlighted this before.
I know.
But I mean, we can keep it. We can tag it in every newsletter.
As a principal broker, I like to have this information because when somebody asks me where should I go to school,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to send them somewhere where only 10% are passing.
Yes. Yeah. No, we can make sure it's included in everyone. I think it was probably in a last year newsletter that I specifically highlighted it. But we can definitely make sure it's included in all.
Okay, one more topic. So maybe some members of the commission don't know that the department has a legislative agenda. I'm not sure I'm stating that correctly, but there are issues that come up inside this department, whether it's insurance or real estate, that they will go to the Hill next year and lobby for to get something changed or added or deleted. And it struck me the other day, I was thinking about that timeshare presentation that we had, and the people that made the presentation said in Tennessee it's not a requirement that money that people pay these companies be held in escrow until the case is resolved. So if they put up $20,000, the timeshare company at this moment apparently can go just spend it and not have anything to show for it. So, and I may be remembering this all wrong, but I would think that the department, since we have so many complaints about timeshare, would want a piece of legislation that said if you're going to be a timeshare exit company, you've got to have an escrow account to hold people's money until the case is resolved.
And especially if we're not auditing their firm.
So that's something that we could look. We actually I did mention, it's probably been 6 months now, but I know Joan in particular had a question about the rescission period and making sure people are more aware of the rescission period. And so Anna and I had discussed some potential legislation on that rescission period and making sure that consumers are hearing it or it's being very clearly stated to them how long they have to rescind the contract. And we found out that that potentially can be changed in rule, which is something that if something can be changed in rule, then they always would rather us change it in rule than have to go through the process of the law. So Anna and I can look at that and see if maybe it's something that we could amend via rule.
Well, I think the representative said they had model legislation available. So I'm just saying if right now they don't have to have an escrow account, these exit companies, and we can cause them to have an escrow account, I think it'd be helpful to the consumer. Just a thought.
But the thought being that it's in escrow and they don't have access to it until the case settles?
Yeah. Okay. I'd like to see the model legislation. I mean, we're not advocates. We don't advocate for anything, but in the past, occasionally somebody from the top floor would come down and say, what do you guys want to see in legislation next year? And to me, this is one thing that...
In Arkansas, they just, within the last 3 months, had a total revamping of their timeshare laws. And they did it through their legislature. So that might be something that we could look at too.
I was thinking also, woke up thinking about that formal hearing. That came to my mind, kind of a cold sweat. But I also, in recent days, preparing for this meeting, had thought about that presentation and the time afforded the two timeshare pros, and I was recalling where we have moved the ball since then. And it just, my sense in thinking back about that was just we're going to give them some air to let them allow their grievances to be heard, and we're going to continue on as we have and will plan to. And the consumer is in the same position they were 60 days ago. And the rescission period, that was one of the first things that stuck out since I've been a commissioner, and I put my full support behind either a different rule or legislation. Maybe has to be a witness sign it as well. There's something that can happen in the moment to where It doesn't have to be Commissioner Ferris or Diaz saying this is 10 days, but something of that gravity to where, I mean, it's every complaint.
It could be a blank that they have to sign also, a little something written about it, and they have to sign it. At least before I signed it, I might look and see what that says. They don't have to even tell the people about the rescission, is what we heard. So
yeah, you have to dig for it in the contract. And
Yeah, so Anna and I worked together because I know Joan, among others, had expressed a concern over the lack of the consumer having to hear and know that. And so we had drafted some language to be included, and so we can bring that back before the commission. But we were essentially told this could be done in rule, and so that's how it should be, how we should proceed.
By rule takes a lot longer than by legislation.
It's not always, but sometimes.
If I had a choice and I was trying to get something done, I'd prefer, if it wasn't too controversial, just to head up the hill. But
well, the department is limited. All of their legislation has to run through the governor's office, and so it's very. We don't.
I'm on the priority list,
and so. Well, not low on the priority list, but there's just a whole department worth of things. And so if something can be changed via rule, that they're always going to say, regardless of.
You know, in addition to the rescission period, I don't know what the statute is in Tennessee, but I think it's usually 10 days in most states. I'd like to see it be 14, just because I want people to be able to go home after their vacation and have as much time as possible for that sanity check to make sure they really want to do it.
So I think the actual time frame is set out in law, and so we wouldn't be able to change the time frame. I think there's one rescission for if you actually see the property in person, and then there's one if you only saw like a model, you didn't actually see the one that you're buying. So we couldn't change that, but we could add a rule that requires the purchaser to actually hear or sign off to the rescission period so that they're well aware.
So do timeshares not have to have a firm license?
They have a timeshare license.
Is it a firm? Because I wasn't following this morning about they're not audited because they're not a firm.
So Anna has told me that they could be audited under a different section. So we could start including them, but the way that they're set up, there's timeshare companies, which are in our system as a timeshare registration. And then there's also something called a timeshare exempt company, which are typically companies that are not located in Tennessee, but they want to market their timeshare in Tennessee. And so they also have to have a license.
A firm license.
It's a timeshare registration or timeshare exempt license.
So that seems like a big gap right there. If we can't audit
so
a timeshare company.
Anna has said that she believes that we can. It's just historically not something that has been done.
Well, I mean, we have so many timeshare cases. I've been on here 8 years, and I mean, they're not lessening at all. So we need to be doing what we're doing is not working. So, I mean, we need to have some sort of check and balances, I would think. Otherwise, they're listening to this today too, and like, you know, they're not going to audit us. So I think we need to look at that with a serious eye.
The authority is there. I think that it was just kind of something that was misunderstood previously. So, what I've looked at today, the statute, I think that we can start including that. So, I want to double check probably with Mark and then meet with Caitlin, but that's something we can definitely look into. I'd be surprised if we wouldn't be able to do it.
I think that's the will of this. I mean, I'm not speaking for everybody, but I see a lot of heads nodding yes. That's we need it.
Yeah. Well, and going back to the timeshare, so another gap for me for the consumer is a lack of independent representation. There's no agency agreement between the customer and the timeshare company, Their analogy of a car salesman is ridiculous because there's no fiduciary responsibility between a car salesman and a consumer either. And purchasing a car is a lot different than purchasing a timeshare. So I don't know if it's rule or by statute, but by some way, I would like to see an independent representation for the consumer during those presentations. I just think it's important.
That's a good ask. That seems like moving a mountain. That seems like changing a full industry to me. I'm not saying never. I just think.
I mean, the industry, they're exploiting a loophole. I mean, it's, and that's what industry does. They look for loopholes and they exploit it. It's up to a body that's constituted to defend the consumer to say, wait a minute, the consumer needs independent representation so they can be aware of the rescission period and what their rights are under the contract they're about to sign. That's just me.
Would it not just be a Tennessee rule versus, I mean, nobody else is doing it in any other state. But, I mean, that shouldn't hold us back if we can be in the forefront.
There's a chance here, as I see it, if I'm a licensee holder, especially in the markets that are heavily concentrated with timeshare activity and business, I see it as an opportunity to say, okay, how can I be independent representation and negotiate a commission from the timeshare company or from my buyer or from my timeshare buyer. And because it's always fluid who pays my commission, but say I could go and say, I'll charge you $500 to sit with you for this hour. Period. Do you agree to that? And negotiate and be an advocate for the client. That's a great business idea, because there'll be people who would say, no, I don't even want to do it. And they'll say, okay, well, here's at least a one pager I've prepared of things to be ready for or be mindful of. And the top one is there's a 10-day rescission period. But then they say, wow, this is a lot. You gave this to me for free. Would you do it for $250, DJ? Well, I've got time. I've just got back from the beach, whatever. There's an opportunity here. And the timeshare industry, looking at those numbers and what has been learned from our time talking about it, the business is huge. There's so much money in that industry that I never knew of and they want all of it. It's like and so it just seems like an opportunity for either somebody to help that work better and help the consumer and improve the industry.
Okay, I think we've just done what we can do today. Let's say.
Let's get that information from Anna and Caitlin so we can start getting the ball rolling.
Okay. Next up, we are to the consent agenda. Happy to see Dennis back, Pam back. We have 57 cases today. And out of that list of 57, these are the cases that I have that have been pulled. If you're taking notes, first is case 1, then 24, 26, 27, 36, 37, 38, and 56 and 57.
Did you
say 32? Yeah, I was going to say, I think we also had
32.
Mm-hmm. Ferris and Franks both pulled 32.
My fault, sorry. Anybody else have any other cases they would like to pull? If not, the chair is open to entertaining a motion that approves council's recommendation on all cases 1 through 57, with the exception of those cases we just read out. Joe made the motion, seconded by Jeff. Let's vote. If you're in favor of the motion to accept council's recommendation on cases 1 through 57, with those exceptions that we've just noted, please vote aye.
Aye.
If you're opposed, vote no. That motion passes unanimously. Okay, Dennis, case 1, you recommend we discuss this?
Yes. Dennis Gregory for the agency. So really the only issue, I think the facts, they're as clear as normally any complaints facts are provided summaries are. The only issue is whether or not I think that did the respondent act reasonably using the power of attorney given what she knew versus because there's not really any evidence she actually contacted this lady personally and said, this is what you want to do. I've got a power of attorney that appears to be yours and appointing your granddaughter as the agent, attorney in fact. That apparently wasn't done, but everything else tends to kind of lean towards the power of attorney. It appeared to be still in good standing. It wasn't, as we find out according to the complainant. So that's really the issue, is whether or not that was reasonable to rely on the power of attorney as she knew it, facts that around it, or whether there was a greater responsibility to confirm this is what the person wanted to do.
No evidence to show that the respondent knew that the POA had been withdrawn. Move to dismiss.
Second, Corbett, Mr. Diaz makes a motion to dismiss. Discussion.
So I wanted to ask, so a power of attorney, doesn't it usually have an expiration date on it or a circumstance as an expiration? Or
sometimes they do. It's not required. They can sort of be open-ended. A lot of times, yeah, a power of attorney might be only for a period of a year. A lot of times that's only in a situation where that, you know, someone's going to be out of the country or be incapacitated for a set amount of time. Yeah. But no, I mean, they could simply just be open-ended. In fact, that majority of them usually are, particularly with people who are maybe at a stage where they think that at any point, you could say age, at any point someone could become incapacitated, and that way you'd have the power of attorney that would be available. And as long as it was that it survived their incapacity, which most of them have that language in there, then the power of attorney would still have been valid.
So did you see a copy of that?
No, that was one thing that would have, and didn't see the latest one, and didn't see the previous
Either one. So did the respondent see the power of attorney?
The respondent appears to have seen the prior power of attorney, the one that she acted on and did the listing based on. Well, no, one's going to supersede the other. I mean, it whichever one really is later in time.
You're not on. You're not turned on.
You're on, but your microphone isn't.
Her.
It wasn't. So the more current one would supersede the other.
Right. I don't think there's any question that the later power of attorney was the one that was in a, well, there really we don't know if there was a later power of attorney at the time this actually took effect. All we know is that there was a revocation. So you've got the power of attorney, that's one document. You've got the revocation, which is a separate document. And I think that's where everything ended at the time the transaction occurred. And so then the respondent comes in and says, well, I want my money for, having to sort of undo all of this. And then I guess maybe the money was never forthcoming. I guess the broker didn't think that she owed this person anything. She said, look, I looked at what I saw. I knew these people, and I didn't have any question about whether it was valid.
So your recommendation was to discuss. So after we've had this conversation now, do you have another recommendation?
My recommendation, if I had to make one or the other, would have been to close. I just think based on the facts that were known to really to all parties, particularly the broker.
All right, the motion on the floor is to dismiss or close. Discussion. If you're in favor of that motion, vote aye.
Aye.
If opposed, vote no. And the motion passes unanimously. Next up is number 24. And what caught my attention on this, Dennis?
Verify that's one of mine. It may be.
Oh, it is 24. Okay, so I'm okay with your recommendation. Here's what caught my attention on this one. The last paragraph, or the last full paragraph, where it says the buyers were under the impression that the buyer's representation agreement was exclusive to that sole offer. The buyers further alleged that the complainant failed to provide any sort of explanation on the relevant details of the exclusive buyer representation agreement, including the effective dates of the agreement and the basic terms of the agreement. So if that's true, I would say that's a violation of a responsibility that a licensee has to anybody. And so the note I wrote to myself was, how about opening a complaint against the complainant? Because, I mean, if what this buyer says, and they submitted a letter stating that, it's pretty clear to me there wasn't reasonable skill and care taken by the complainant.
I think that's.
Would it be the complainant or the complainant's agent?
Complainant is a broker.
I mean, a letter of warning at least, if we're going to discuss it.
I would accept they have previous complaint. If you look up at the top, we've been penalized before. So, what do you think, Pam?
I think that's yes. I think that's a valid point. I would agree with that recommendation.
But would you like to change your recommendation?
I would.
And what is that recommendation now, so I can get a motion on it?
Would be for, do you want to do a letter of warning or open it up against the complainant's agent?
I don't like letters of warning. I mean, especially since this person's got a little history with the Real Estate Commission. So
I think
it's
that
a broker.
Open it up against the principal broker and give an opportunity to.
It's against the complainant, who's a broker, but not necessarily the principal broker. Correct.
The complainant is a licensed affiliate broker.
And is a licensed affiliate.
Okay, I'm sorry. That's right. So,
it says a broker.
Well, that's the respondent.
You're thinking of?
Okay, so I'm thinking your recommendation is that we close the file on this complaint and open a new complaint against the complainant, whoever that person is, for failure to exercise reasonable skill and care. Is there such a motion?
Yes.
Steve makes a motion, seconded by Marcia. Discussion. If you're in favor of that motion, vote aye.
Aye.
If you're opposed, vote no. And that motion passes. Number 26. Someday we'll make a significant impression on people, but this is another case where an agent gave his or her buyer keys to the property before they owned it. And right here again is one of those letter of warning recommendations that I think is not enough. I don't know how we're going to get people out of houses before they own them, but we don't need to be giving keys out. So
that also is reasonable skill and care to me.
It absolutely is.
We already got a letter of warning, so about reasonable skilling. Oh no, okay. I'm sorry. I'm at the bottom.
This one is brought against the firm, not the.
26 is against.
Oh, I'm on 32.
Yeah, 26 is against the broker. So counsel recommended a letter of warning. When I read through it, I think it's just a small slap on the wrist at this point.
You want to fine?
I'd like to open a complaint, and we have to. Oh, no, I want to fine. Come to think about it, how much do you think, Stacey? Well, Miss Torbett, who's got a soft heart too, says $500 instead of a letter of warning. Any other thoughts on this?
I'll second that motion.
All right, the motion on the floor is to offer consent. What do we call this? How do you phrase that exactly? A consent agreement?
Authorize a civil penalty in the amount of $500 and a consent order. I'll put the.
That's good enough.
Is there any education we could give this person since we've gone light on the dollar amount? Could we have them take the core class again, or there's not a course on common sense?
The chair's gonna say that there's a proper motion on the floor.
Okay.
Which it would include a $500 civil penalty, an offer of a $500 civil penalty. Discussion on the motion? If you're,
Marcia's looking for.
But the discussion is, what education would we give them? Where would they learn not to do this?
They knew it was a mistake, though. They admitted it.
They all know it's a mistake once the complaint's filed.
Right. I think 500 is.
I prefer education over dollars. I don't know, or both. But if we can't think of a classroom to take, then I'll just leave it as it is then.
Okay.
How long have they been abroad?
That would be a good class for someone to write, though.
All right, you've heard the motion. Any further discussion? If you're in favor of the motion to offer a $500 civil penalty, please vote aye.
Aye.
If you're opposed, vote no. And that motion passes unanimously. Number 27. This was a kind of a screwy case where a licensee leaves a firm, but his listings continue on the firm's website. And at some point, his former principal broker files a complaint against the licensee, am I stating this correctly, for continuing to advertise on the company's website.
It's not the company's website, I believe. It's something that's generated by some software and marketing that they use. Now, I'm not the expert on that, but yes.
So
other than that, that seems
the
correct.
former licensee's defense is, or the respondent's response is, he couldn't go in there to take it off. Only his former principal broker could. Am I stating that correctly?
That's his defense, correct?
So, did the former principal broker ever try to take it off? He's filing a complaint against a former licensee when he's got the authority to correct the issue, it sounds like to me.
The way, and I don't have the specific information, but the way I pieced together the information that I have is that the former principal broker is the one who has the access to be able to remove it, who is different from the complainant in this particular case. That is why I'd recommended opening a complaint against the former principal broker.
So
did they release those listings? When the person left the company, did the principal broker release the listings?
I don't have that information.
It reads like he was just still using the firm's name. It says the firm's branding, included the firm's branding.
I just can't imagine a reason why you would want to do that.
Well, because it's just one of those things that got out into the cloud somewhere, and he didn't ever. I mean, there's times that stuff gets out and it's hard to fix, but
because it's not an MLS where the principal broker could change it.
No, and then later it does read like it's the firm set it up, and that the broker authorized user lower. Up at the top in the second paragraph, it says he was using the firm's branding, and the use of branding suggests the respondent still feel in the listings.
I believe that's right. I believe this software that they're talking about generated advertisements on social media platforms, because the respondent talks about all the steps that he took to try to address the issue, and in various social media platforms, because some specific information he provided was what he did, with regard to Twitter. I'm not sure how that works as far as what was generated, but he did everything that, according to him, that he was able to do to remove it, but he doesn't have the credentials to be able to to the form. About doing that and hadn't received a response, at least at the point where he provided the response to the complaint.
Do you have any thoughts on it? Council
It just
recommendation?
seemed like the broker's mad because he left and found something. Like when we do a listing, there's a box that says the client agrees to let it go to social media, and as in the ML, it could get, not. If I left that firm and went somewhere else, I could see how it just hung out there a little while. As long as it's
Still
new,
be on Zillow.
yeah, as long as it's new listings, didn't use the old firm, I think it's an innocent mistake, and he just has a little axe to grind. But that's.
Well, if you'd like to make a motion to dismiss based on that.
I'll make a motion to dismiss this.
Second by DJ Ferris. Discussion. Those in favor of that motion vote aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. That motion passes unanimously. Number 36. 32. Like I said, number 32. Marcia and DJ. Marcia, you want to start it?
This is the one where the charges against the real estate firm by the complainant's a resident. And so the problem to me in this scenario, the recommendation is assess a penalty in the amount of $1,000 for violation of, okay, now I'm going to have to look it up, 6213. What is 6213 302A?
Employing or compensating any person who is not a licensed broker or a licensed affiliate for performing the acts regulated by the chapter.
I agree with that, but then on the other hand, nothing's being done about the son of this person who is out doing all this stuff, who is unlicensed. So I agree with the civil penalty that's recommended by the state, but I also think that we should also, in addition, open a complaint for unlicensed activity on the son.
EJ.
This is not a 12-year-old son, it's an adult, right?
Yeah, I think
Right.
I think that is a recommendation I could support, and this is just another clarion call to have good representation. And am I just so naive? I mean, people may do business this way. Like it's really sad to hear and see. I mean, at any rate,
You'll be surprised every month you sit in that.
You've nailed my recommendation,
Okay.
Vice Chairman.
So, Marcia,
Thank you.
your recommendation is to accept the council's recommendation and additionally open up a complaint against
the son for unlicensed activity.
The son for unlicensed activity.
Second.
And second is by Mr. Ferris. Is there discussion? If not, let's vote. Those in favor of that motion vote aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. And that motion passes unanimously. Now, number 36. Marcia.
Anybody else have 36 down?
I did.
So we have authorized a $500 civil penalty, and I have added, I wrote add education to it, a core class. So I thought it needed more than just that civil penalty.
So she just took the core class. It looks like she's got her license in February.
And she didn't learn a thing.
That's
Sorry.
So I didn't. What my problem was the $500 component. I thought, I mean, if anybody's going to just put out something out there that says, send me the name of somebody you might want to buy or sell, give me your Venmo contact information, and I'll send you $100 immediately.
Who does that?
Somebody that's
Send me
got a
your
lot of
Venmo.
money. So I'm thinking $1,000, not $500.
Okay, I would agree to that, and then I would also like to add that that they take the core class again with no CE credit within 180 days.
So the motion is to amend council's recommendation by changing $500 to $1,000.
Needs a second.
In order and requiring the core class to be taken by the licensee within 180 days with no CE credit available.
Second.
The second was by Mr. Moffitt. So you've heard the motion. Is there discussion? Let's vote. Those in favor of that motion vote aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. That motion passes unanimously. Number 37, DJ, then Marcia.
rereading this, and perhaps I could have a soft heart that he realized it now, and he's supplying all of this backstory on his renewal. I, at first, when I read this, felt the need to levy a fine of $500 to $1,000 based on not supplying this before, to begin with, and taking incorrect advice from whoever it was in his office who said it didn't relate to real estate. I think that was ill-advised. So I'm open. I'd love to hear more discussion.
Marcia, you marked it, and then I marked it, so you go ahead.
Well, I wasn't near as nice as you, DJ. You know, it's sad that this person couldn't rely on whoever they talked to, but I don't think it didn't say a principal broker, did it? It's just someone in the office. So could have just been anyone.
Yeah, he was not specific. He just said someone with the brokerage.
That could be somebody else that just got their license also. I don't know. This one was so involved so much money and mishandling of money and taking of money that I was surprised that it was. I'm wondering. Okay, first of all, how'd they get a license in 2019? They got it because they were not honest on their application. Is that correct? Or did they have to divulge this?
In 2019, in July, when he submitted the application, there were questions in the application that were answered no, that should have been answered yes if answered correctly. And that was subsequent to the discipline by FINRA, which went into effect in May of 2019, and which he executed. So that's something that he would have been aware of.
Yeah, clearly should have been told. I'm listening.
I got a question.
Yes, Steve.
So, what did he answer no to that he should have answered yes to?
I've got this pulled up here. There's two different documents. That one of them is his application, and the question is, have you ever had a complaint filed against you with any regulatory agency or with any court? And FINRA would be considered a regulatory agency. The answer was no. And then the other question is, have you ever been refused a license or had a license revoked, suspended, reprimanded, or fined by any federal, state, or local government, which FINRA would be considered a subset? And he answered no. And then on the application or form that they fill out, I believe for the criminal investigation.
So they fill out one on their test, and then they fill out one on the actual core application. So those are the two spots that it's filled out.
And filled out incorrectly on both spots, right?
He answered the specific question in this document is, have you ever had any disciplinary sanctions imposed by any local, state, or federal occupational licensing body, which FINRA fits into clearly, and the answer was no.
So this person shouldn't have had a license in the first place.
Well, they should have at least come before the commission.
Exactly. Right. So I'm thinking at this point that we revoke this license, and then he can come before the commission if he wants to.
Let me ask something before we get to that. What's the status of his license today?
He renewed in this year. When he did disclose all this information during the renewal cycle and did what should have been done 2 years ago. And the status is, because of due process concerns, the renewal goes ahead, but then an administrative complaint is opened in order to decide.
It's active.
Right.
Active.
As an individual's license is considered a property right, we can't hold up their renewal. So if it's a case of someone that currently is licensed and there is some kind of disciplinary action, then we would administratively open a complaint. But if they had in like back in 2019, he would have been required to come before the commission.
So
an active license, though, yes.
Marcia is talking about the potential for revoking the license. Here's what I think would be helpful to me. in the narrative, it says proposed findings of fact and law are due to be submitted October 7th, 2021. So depending on what those findings of fact are, then maybe legal or management would want to bring a suggestion that we suspend, revoke, do nothing. But if those findings of fact come back and show where he or she has agreed to some fairly onerous findings of fact, then perhaps at that point we have the authority to go take another look at it.
I agree with you, Commissioner. Your options here are basically anything from a civil penalty through revocation or deferring this until there is an entry of a findings of fact and conclusions of law from the Securities Division hearing that we would be able to review. Now, those aren't scheduled. I believe I spoke to the attorney who's handling that to be submitted until October the 7th. So it would be deferred probably, if something was, I would assume it would be entered not too long after that, but it would be after it was entered. And so probably the November meeting would be the earliest that we would be able to represent that.
Oh, if we can't do anything with the license today, we can
suspend it.
You can
until we get those findings of fact.
You can only do like a summary suspension on it. I don't think we could do a summary suspension on this, could we?
That would be the only way where you could suspend it. So any suspension or revocation would go through the normal process that we send them a consent order, they agree, disagree, and then a formal hearing is either had or not, depending on what they decide. I don't think this would be ripe for summary suspension because of the time period that's lapsed, not only from knowing from when this issue was brought to us, but also when it began. So, but that's just my recommendation. You can agree or disagree, but I don't think that would be one of these cases.
So the lapse has occurred because they fraudulently got a license in the first place. That's why there's been a lapse. And so for this person, he's been out here, he's even renewed, and he's had a license all this time when he shouldn't have had a license in the first place. Who knows what he's out here doing? If you read this, you're going to see some serious crimes have been committed here. So, what's the most we can do until that summary suspension, October 7th?
One thing I'll note here is that the rule that has been violated here would have required him, obviously, in the initial application stage to have disclosed this, answered yes, where he had answered no, to provide a copy of the FINRA disciplinary matter and any other responsive disciplinary matter at that time, and then to informally appear before the commission to discuss whether or not that should have prevented his license. That didn't occur. So at his renewal stage, however, he did fulfill the disclosure and the producing the document requirements. So yeah, he did.
So why was he renewed after why was he renewed instead of being told he needed to come before us then?
Because that's when, at that point, the complaint was administratively open, because you could go back in time and see, okay, well, based on what he provided, here's the dates, and so this is something
that was kind of also what Anna was saying about the property right. Once they've issued the license, it's a property
fraudulently.
But he defrauded us to get the license.
So the state's going to say, okay, they defrauded us. Let him keep on selling real estate, stealing money. And now we've caught him. So surely our hands are not tied on something like this.
We wouldn't have known, though, unless he had disclosed it this time. So, if he had just answered no again, he would still have his license. We wouldn't be here. So, there is that.
And who filed the complaint?
We opened the complaint.
Okay.
So we got...
When you found it out.
Yeah. So what happens... The
state did what they were supposed to do with the information they were giving by this fraudulent person.
So... Will the findings on October 7th have any bearing on whether we have any intent to renew or approve the renewal? If so, I would move to defer till our October meeting,
November, make it November.
November meeting.
Yeah, that was gonna be my recommendation, is to defer it. Not the findings of fact or conclusions of law are something that you can look at, but it's not mandatory that that is ruled by your decision. So even if the findings of fact or conclusions of law came out unfavorably, you don't have to use that information. But I think it might be a good idea to wait for that information, and then once it's produced to
I think in order for this commission to make any decision, we need all the information that we can get, all the information. So I'm willing for us to defer it, but I and let's see what those conclusions of fact are, and let's have it on the November agenda. And this one you had just to discuss. So that would be my motion, is that we defer it. Oh, did somebody already make a motion?
That's DJ's motion, which you're about to second.
I second it.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to take case 37 and move it to the November agenda. In the meantime, hopefully we'll get findings of facts, conclusions of law agreed to by the parties.
Question.
Yes.
FINRA is a federal agency. Is that correct? So it's he had a Series 63 license, probably, right?
I don't know what that means, but if it's related to securities, yes.
Correct. He was a stock. Yes.
So,
stockbroker.
Or 7.
Yeah. So FINRA.
Series 7 to 63 is a state.
Right. So FINRA itself is a nonprofit organization that regulates security exchanges, but they're overseen by the SEC.
Right.
So it would fall into that kind of category.
And that October 7th date is a date certain.
That's when they're due to be submitted. That doesn't mean that's the date that their findings would be signed off on by the ALJ. The ALJ taking it under advisement.
So submitted makes it part of the public record, and that's why we have access to it. So when they're submitted, they become part of a public record, and that's why we'll have access to it. Is that okay?
All right, the motion on the floor is to defer this item until the November meeting, which might be on a Tuesday and might be on a Wednesday. All right, discussion. Let's vote. Those in favor of the motion, vote aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. That motion passes unanimously. Number 38, Marcia.
Okay, number 38 is where the photographer was putting on Facebook coming soon pictures of houses. The recommendation is to close, but I have a real problem with this photographer putting coming soon. To me, it's advertising this property. It's not advertising his photography when you say coming soon.
Here's the reason that I recommended what I did in this particular case, since I was able to actually look at the photos and the post, which is obviously something I can't share with you all. And I tried to describe it in the summary, and I'll try it just for your own consideration. What the pictures that he actually took were of the interior of a room, just nicely decorated and so forth. And then there's just a watermark on there. There's no description of the property, nothing identifying the property in any way whatsoever. It just says coming soon, and he's showing examples of his new area of business. So looking at that, and I had a hard time seeing a room that's not even identified as something akin to a listing or a specific property that's being advertised for sale, and he wasn't receiving any type of a fee for posting that on Facebook. And that's why I went with closure. I think there's certainly another option of the letter of warnings that I know Chairman Grease does not like, to let him know you need to, it'd be feasible at this point for you to not say anything, just post your photos and put coming soon or anything.
Oh, here, that's from an attorney's perspective. From a realtor perspective, a licensee perspective, when I see a coming soon and there's no address, I'm going to be calling you immediately to find out that address. With the market the way it is, if it's on Facebook, and I've seen this on Facebook before too, there'll be 50 people. Here's my email. Send me the information. Where is it and the price? And listen, I did one the other night, and it's obviously not this one. They sent me the information, the price, and so I'm like, so yes, this is real estate advertising, and probably he doesn't know because he is a photographer. But I mean, we have to do something other than just close it. And I'm okay, and I know you hate a letter of warning, but I don't know what else we can give somebody that's not a licensee other than unlicensed activity.
And we don't know that those things have occurred in this case. If we had that information, then I think we're definitely over in unlicensed activity case. But it's hard to build a case just based on what we have.
And at the top of the narrative, you say both are affiliate brokers. The complainant and respondent are affiliate brokers. Am I reading?
Number 38, real estate agent and professional photographer. The complainant was a real estate agent.
I thought we were on
38. All right, so I'm going to, has anybody made a motion? I'm going to make a motion that we send a letter of warning to this photographer.
Motion on the floor offered by Ms. Frank, seconded by Ms. Smith. Would, if passed, ask legal to send a letter of warning to the photographer. Is he a photographer / real estate agent? Is that right?
No, we don't know that.
Just checking.
And I'm not looking it up either.
All right. Discussion. Let's vote on the motion. If you're in favor of that motion, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed, vote no. That motion passes unanimously. Number 56. Marcia.
Okay. And my note is there was no expiration date. I am having to go back and look at this because I've had so many of them. Did you look in the next to the last paragraph? It says the documentation includes written disclosures concerning ownership and use. Complainants were given rescission rights, and the contracts became binding after the rescission period expired. Do we know that took place? The written disclosure?
Yes. Usually these timeshare companies, when they respond, they send in all of the documents that they refer to. And I do always check to make sure the rescission language is in there.
All right, I'm going to...
and then, which is 30.
All right, I'm going to move that we accept council's recommendation to close it.
Second by Ms. Torbett. Discussion. Those in favor of that motion vote aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. Number 57, both DJ and myself pulled this one out. DJ, you want to speak to it first?
Yeah, my notes, Chairman, were okay. Letter of warning. Letter of warning, perhaps. I'm rereading it, and they made the respondent made a concerted effort here after having retained counsel to state their case, and they've done so well. And yet, I think there is some reasonable skill and care that could have taken place, but I'm okay with a letter of warning, but I'm open to your thoughts too, Chairman.
So here are my thoughts. I don't think in my history on this commission that we've ever had an attorney give us so much legal background to justify his or her decision. And when I read that, here's what I got out of this, Pam, and I'll have to decide whether, from a legal point of view, your recommendation may be absolutely correct. But if it is absolutely correct, then I could interpret this that I could advertise anything as long as sometime subsequently I go back and correct it. Is that what this says?
No. What this says is that the case law that they provided basically, and I apologize, it was too much legal information. I've not had this issue come up before the commission, so I'd rather give you more.
I'm with you. I'm okay
less.
with it.
Plus, I'm an old defense attorney, insurance defense attorney. I write motions, so legalese is in my nature. In this particular case, my concern is the case law that they provided, which is why, because it's very clear that the facts that are in this particular case line up with that case law. It's valid and it's compelling. And the problem is that in making a finding, if this commission makes a finding that there was a violation, that there was not reasonable skill and care, it conflicts with what the court has said, which is a part of the elements of a negligent claim in this particular case. And that sets up a legal conflict, and just frankly, not something that, given this case law, which obviously is going to be guiding at a hearing, not something that I think that we would be able to prove based on the facts of this case and that case law, and because the disclaimer information in this case and in the case that they have cited is almost exactly the same. And that is my concern.
So the case law, at least this case, says because the agent did something like say, you need to satisfy yourself. Don't believe anything I've said in my advertising. These are I'm paraphrasing.
It's called a disclaimer.
It's a disclaimer, but the courts, and at least the case you quoted, said because the agent said that agent is resolved. Am I saying that correctly? The court said because she said I don't know if it's right or not, or he, that, and they put something in the MLS that said information is not guaranteed.
I never see a contract anymore that does not have a disclaimer with it.
Well, I'm just trying to find out, is it okay for real estate agents to just say anything they want to as long as at the bottom say don't believe anything I just said?
I know, but that's what that disclaimer's for, and that's what this attorney is saying here.
And so I'm looking at it from a consumer's point of view, not a legal point of view. And I think that agents should be responsible if they make a representation that has a good reason to be correct. And this agent missed it by 1,000 feet or more because she believed the builder, which maybe is a good defense. I don't know.
That's not a good defense.
Well,
so the complainant states in the original narrative that they made the offer with the stated square footage, and when the appraiser came back with a different square footage at a lower appraisal, they rescinded the offer, and the agent was provided with the appraiser's report with the appraised square footage. And then the respondent went out and advertised on the MLS the same property at the incorrect square footage and number of bedrooms. So does anything in the new information conflict with the complainant's assertion?
The agent had the information. It was already on MLS with the 2,600 square feet description, and when the appraisal report was received, she did not. Listing was already there. She didn't make any changes to it until the next morning because she verified the information according to the new information she provided, talked to her principal broker about it, made the change the next morning before it was relisted. Basically, what the complainant had done was looked it up before the change was made just to see if there had been any change. And so the complaint was based on their concern that the change hadn't been made at the point that they had looked it up the next morning.
It was just an overnight thing, wasn't it? Now that I
Correct.
remember
Okay,
that.
so but no offer was submitted and accepted in that window.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the
No,
first.
no new offers were submitted and accepted in that window.
Correct.
Okay.
So probably the broker representing the buyer in the case where it did not appraise probably was watching to see, did that agent change that, because she had it wrong in the MLS, and yes, I know she has a disclaimer in there, so what can I do? And so when did she send you a photo of it still in there? It seems like one of those gotcha kind of things, you know?
I'm not really even going on about this particular case so much as the notion that you can add a disclaimer to your marketing and be absolved of any misrepresentation. At least that's maybe it's a particular set of facts related to a particular case that comes into
From
play.
a legal perspective, you know, my thought on your question would be, it would be fact specific in a particular case. I don't think that you could take this case or this commission this day, particular set of facts, and say it's a free for all just because there's a disclaimer. I think you would have to take it, and the court would take it on a case by case basis based on the language. If the disclaimer is there, if that a disclaimer is on MLS, what the language states and what the facts of the case are.
As long as we can get that on the record, I'm okay with your recommendation, but I don't want anybody to look at our decision on this case and go, man, we can say whatever we want to at this point. It's a case specific, fact specific situation.
So maybe there should be a letter of warning.
Vice Chairman, I suggest I move we issue a letter of warning to the respondent. And my basis for doing that is I recognize how it is possible to get square footage incorrect. Calling a room a bedroom that is not could be discussed upon grounds of reasonable skill and care, and yet I, from my personal practice, know that I'm every few years I'm meeting up with an appraiser and getting refreshed on what's a bedroom, what's not. And I'm not an appraiser, and I know that I anticipate this broker would disclaim I'm not an appraiser either. So just a letter of warning to do reasonable skill and care in your advertising and your home tour. Did you walk through this home before you listed it?
I second that, and it lets them know at least that we're watching it and we're looking at it and we don't like it.
Yep. So I guess another question is, what source should our agents rely on in terms of determining an appropriate square footage of the property? Is it the appraiser?
That's
a
broker's question, I suspect. But
yeah. Okay.
In any case, the motion on the floor is to ask legal to send the respondent a letter of warning.
I got a question.
1 second. Made by DJ Ferris, seconded by Marcia Franks. Steve?
Question for DJ. So, playing devil's advocate, if I'm the agent, what would you want me to do? In other words, you're going to give me a letter of warning saying I did not exercise reasonable skill and care, yet, I mean, what do you want me to go measure the house myself? Do you want me to, how do I do better than I did?
Well, you could look and see, instead of going by, because my company does new home construction. We are not drawing our own plans. We hire licensed architects to draw our plans. And so if that person had seen, sometimes builders, though, they will draw their own plans. That would be information that I would want to know as the agent. And if a builder told me, oh, I drew their own plan, but you know, my degree's in interior design, so I know how to I know how to add it up. Where I think a lot of realtors don't know how to add it up.
Is there in commercial, there's a standard that tells you how to measure a building, down to measuring to glass and all these different things called BOMA. I should know the answer to this, but is there anything in residential that tells somebody exactly how to measure a house? I don't know that. I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, for me, the question is not the measurement of the property, because that can be done by a professional. That's not my question, and that's not what I'm sending the letter of warning to in regards, because I could see myself being in those shoes, get a sketch by the builder, and I think that's pretty reasonable to go by. My question is, upon reading it, and we probably won't ever know this because the motion is for a letter of warning. Did the respondent get the sketch? She'd worked with the builder before, or he had worked with the builder and said, okay, we'll list this. Did the respondent go to the property and walk through there and count 4 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms? That was more what I'm thinking.
Yeah, but the sketch is talking about footage, not talking. The footage was off.
The footage was off, and the number of bedrooms was off.
But was a sketch like to scale? I mean, was it? You don't know all this kind of thing.
Well, I don't know. My question isn't about the. I would go by the appraiser, what the appraiser measured it as for the square footage.
Right.
If I had not hired an appraiser myself to measure it, and there's occasionally a company around here in Middle Tennessee who there was a husband and wife team who did home measurements. So there are ways to take that onus off of you as a broker or listing agent and say, hey, I've hired a professional person. Verify it if you want, verify it, but this is deemed to be accurate. And so I think the square footage, once the buyer submitted that and said, hey, the square footage is off, it didn't appraise, we're rescinding it, then the respondent went and made that change overnight. I think that's a reasonable time. My question is about the number of bedrooms, not the square footage.
Well, and that is different all over the state of Tennessee. It depends. Some counties do not have codes. I mean, I found that out here when Wendell Alexander told me we don't have codes in his county. So It doesn't matter if it's got a window or closet.
So maybe we just close then.
No, I think it needs a letter of warning because I think there is a lack of skill and care. And if a builder gave me something, and it says sketch, several times it says sketch, that is not a set of drawings for a house plan. Right. So if it was a sketch, I would, to turn it into to anybody, unless you're in one of those counties that has no codes, then you can build it by a sketch. So we really don't have all that information here before us. I agree with the letter of warning, and we don't like it, but I think that's all we can do today.
Other comments? Yes, Joan.
I think the letter
Bring that microphone down just a little bit. Bring it to you.
I think the letter of warning isn't so much about the amount of bedrooms or those things. I think the letter of warning is on timing, and that is once the agent got the information, it should have been changed immediately, and I think that's what it's about. And I think it's on timing, and it's not waiting until it's convenient for me to change it. I think you had the information, it should have been done immediately. And I think that's what the letter of warning should be.
Other comments? Okay, the motion is to instruct legal to send a letter of warning to the respondent. Discussion, let's vote. Those in favor of that motion vote aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. That motion passes unanimously. And that's the last one I have, unless you've got some more to give to us, which I hope you don't.
I don't have any more.
All right.
So.
Anna, anything you want to report to us that we need to know? We've got a one-day meeting. We don't have a hearing in October. Perhaps we're going to have one in November. What about December? You have any idea yet? Okay, I just sometimes, you get booked out a few months. Okay. Caitlin, anything more?
Nothing further. Just I'll send an email, but just a reminder about October meeting, and then also those couple dates for next year.
Thank you. How's your staff? Everybody's good?
Everybody's great. No issues to report.
I was told that the later it gets in each week, the fewer people show up in this building. Is that right? So,
Who told you that?
I can't reveal my sources. And it wasn't speaking about the real estate commission. It was talking about other departments.
Oh, I'm sure.
But we are on a rotating schedule. one week Monday, Wednesday, Friday, next week Tuesday, Thursday, and so there's always somebody here a couple times a week.
Oh, you know how you earlier today said you'd instructed your client not to answer that question? Well, I was instructed not to answer your question about who told me. Okay, just want to make sure. All right, commissioners, any last words on the way out?
I mean,
all right, we are adjourned. Drive carefully, please. Thank you all for your good work.
Good meeting, John.
What?
Cameron's.
Oh, good. Yeah, if you need a little help in there, and don't leave till you get it.
All right, thank you. Thank you. See you.
This meeting is no longer being recorded or transcribed.
John, did you find the pen? Did she?
Yeah, that's.